The ship took its time slowly descending to the surface of Mars. I shuddered in my seat, but I was neither excited nor nervous. This was only a job to me, and it wasn't a heartwarming one at that. Once we touched down and the resounding beeps of the alarm system phased into white noise, I was able to breathe again.
Cooper, Ronald, are you guys okay?
West asked. Never better. Ronald unattached himself from his seat and laughed.
Ask me the question when I reach there. Pretty sure when we get inside, we're probably not going to be okay.
West grumbled.
Ronald, stop horsing around. Set up the probes. We're about to leave the ship within an hour.
Ronald's laughter rang around the cockpit. I wasn't even sure if it was an honest laugh or a fake one. Today, though, was a special day, because our mission was on Mars. This wasn't the first time humanity has come to Mars. We've come numerous times, but recently humanity tried to colonize the planet.
Cooper!
West called. I left my station and went to West. What's up, Sheriff Western?
Funny. Could you call command control and give them a summary of our landing and what we're about to do?
Sure, no problem, I said. As a mission specialist, I was going to be tasked with assisting my command pilot, Mr. West, with the success of this mission. Everybody was nervous about this mission for a lot of reasons. We did a lot of hellish training to prepare us for this mission. Specifically, after the debacle of the Mars habitation complex. I met up with Ronald and West as the ship released us into the hard reddish-brown surface of Mars. We weren't far from our destination, though. In front of us was a large, human-built complex that was supposed to be our first attempt to colonize this planet. A lot of money went into this place, so there was no way they were going to abandon it so quickly. They should, though, because even though they cleared out the bodies of the deceased, the place wasn't cleaned extensively or managed. I was sure a lot of internal systems fell into disrepair, and we had to wear our masks initially as a precaution. West said as he started walking.
The landing pad is gone.
Dust has covered everything. That's what we noticed as we got closer. The whole facility was covered in a layer of dust. But the landing pad and the outside walking passageways were worse. They were literally absorbed by uneven mounds of dirt. That's what 8 years of neglect did. As far as why this place was neglected, I wasn't even sure about the whole story, personally. I didn't want to know. There were a lot of conflicting stories about the Mars habitation project. How did those people die? Why did nobody contact command control and told them what was going on? The only survivor of the chaos that happened at this facility was considered insane at this point, so people would probably never find out what happened. West input the code to unlock the door. Once we were inside, I saw how badly the station was degraded. From the moss-suffocated air to the stains on the wall, the place had truly fallen out of disarray. We didn't waste any time moving down the corridors and trying to find the main chamber that held the control module and supercomputer. Getting control of this complex as quickly as possible was going to be essential for survival, because we were going to stay here for a while. It took us a hot minute, because a lot of the doors were not opening. I cursed. Damn it! Are we going to have to break our way in? West looked at the map on his PA tablet and said,
There's supposed to be 3 ways to the control room. Let's check down this way.
Thankfully, some of the doors were half opened as if frozen in time, while others were cracked open by the extraction team that came before them. We found the control room, and it was a mess, to say the least.
Good lord,
Ronald said. A large screen showed nothing except many circles of cracks. It was the long crack that came from the left and slithered down the middle that caught my attention, for blood laid across its length. The main dashboard was damaged, with deep cuts into the metal framing. There were even wires strung out from the open compartments underneath the dashboard. West messed with the dashboard until it powered on. Lights glowed through the buttons and indicators as the computer came to life. We got out of our heavy spacesuits and changed into more comfortable attire. We kept on our biomasks since we couldn't trust the air within this place yet. West quickly set up our supplies, while Ronald and I tried to get as many of the systems within the complex online and operational. We tested the systems and quickly found a good number of them weren't working as well, so there was some serious damage. That meant it was fixing time for Ronald and me. A lot of the damage to the systems was caused by a human, meaning it was obvious one of the members of the team tried to sabotage this mission and endanger the lives of his fellow team. Well, at least this evidence was consistent with what the survivors said. To think that a killer was sent into space. It was the last thing anyone wanted to admit. The major oversight NASA had made, not realizing that a sick, demented person was sent unknowingly to Mars, got them dragged through the mud for years by the media. It was a mistake that they were determined not to make again. That's why we were here. Sane, mentally evaluated, strong-willed. We were trained together because the higher-ups assumed that the killer probably lost his mind after spending 1.5 years away from home, rather than the safer possibility that he was just not a good person. As a former soldier myself, I personally didn't think the sick bastard lost his mind. That didn't make much sense to me. No one jumped from being depressed to full-blown serial murder. Still, I was a willing expert determined to do my best. At least that was the mentality I went into this operation with. We decided to have a meeting inside the cafeteria, but it wasn't going to be a comfortable experience. The walls and floor were like some Picasso painting of a 3-year-old, as swabs of dried blood covered everything. I picked up the cleanest chair and kept my hands off the blood-stained table. We sat there, surrounded by all of this mess, and talked like it wasn't even there. It was surreal. West said,
Okay, listen up. There are a lot of things to fix. The ventilation is leaking somewhere. Radiation alarms are spiking at the northwest of the complex. Cooper, those two are on you. The drainage is not clearing out automatically. That will be on me. And as for you, Ronald, clear the landing platform and walking paths. Deal with the spotty electricity.
Can't believe the damage this man did. Ronald responded.
Was that dude high? Like he destroyed everything.
This is why I don't care what nobody says. That man was not crazy. He knew what he was doing. He preemptively tried to sabotage every little thing in this place, and he did a good job of it, because we're struggling to even repair anything. West looked up into the roof and rubbed his forehead in annoyance. The pressure was really starting to hit them now. There weren't a lot of options for trying to make this any better, though.
One thing that I don't get is why he did this. Oh no, we ain't going there, Ronald. Trying to understand why he did this is like trying to figure out the secrets to the universe. We'll never figure it out.
It's simple enough, ain't it? Torture. It's a great way to torture other people. That's what he was doing. So yeah, the survivor was right. That man was evil. Ronald laughed.
You damn well know that's not what the survivors said.
I replied, "You see any ghosts possessing anyone here?" Ronald laughed louder.
Whew, you tell me. You could be the ghost right now distracting us from the truth.
I said sarcastically, "Yes, I am lying to all of you." Wes stood up and said,
If you guys can't repair anything, remake it or construct something that makes the problem go away. Whole new systems? Man, that's going to be a pain. I know, but we don't have a choice. I don't care if you have to cut the path to hell itself. Get it done, or this mission is over before it started. This station was left abandoned for years, and the standards are abysmal. It would be a huge risk to the mission if one of us got sick or injured. So we have to restore this place. It doesn't even have to be fancy. It just has to work.
that was all we needed. The first order of business was that the inside of the complex needed to be cleaned. So I released the small droids we carried and sent them off to wash this place spotless. Ronald got the disinfectant solution tank into the complex, and droids sprayed that solution as they went through the corridors on autopilot. Other droids filtered the air and cleared it of toxins. That was good. Now, to deal with the many malfunctioning systems. My first task was the ventilation system. Most of the filters were burned, and some vents, according to the alarms back at the control module, were underperforming. I replaced the filters. As far as the poor ventilation, I needed to reroute one vent since that area it led to was caved in. My body shivered the moment I stepped in there. I turned on my hand torch and looked up at the roof. It looked like it was mauled open by a T-Rex. What could have done this? It made my skin crawl. I noted the damaged insulation, which was necessary for blocking outside radiation and the high temperature variants. Did that guy really do all of this? This seemed like overkill to me. A shadow passed across the light, and my fingers tightened on my hand torch's handle. My eyes narrowed as I focused on where I moved the beam of light. What was that I just saw now? After staring into the void and finding nothing, I decided to get back to work. My mind must be playing tricks on me. I took up my tools and started to work on cutting off the original vent. This area, which consisted of one lab, a library splashed in a lot of dried blood, and a bathroom, was probably not that important. I pushed open the door to the lab and looked around. There wasn't much in here outside of a few instruments. There were also high-performance cameras and a 3D laser scanner sitting on tripods. The scanner would be useful. I flicked the light switch, but it wasn't working. When I pulled the hand torch up, it revealed the shattered fluorescent lamp on the roof. Great. Part of the roof was carved out like a carton of ice cream with hanging wires. This place wasn't safe. I needed to get out of here. The cabinet should have some useful chemicals. Once I get those, I could leave with everything else. The first cabinets gave me a good selection of disinfectant solutions and instruments. My hand grasped the handle of the next cabinet, and a low screech made me pause. I tilted my head and noted the wire that crossed the door and the hinge. My heart slowed its beat as I moved away. I looked around and I caught sight of the tripod again. That could be useful. I used the tripod to push the cabinet door open instead, and as the door opened, a loud thud echoed from the flying projectile hitting the wall. It was shaped like an arrow. I stared at it in confusion. A trap, and it wasn't tripped until I found it. Was this for the last people that once lived here? Or was it for me? I ripped out the arrow and looked at it. It wasn't generic, but a shabby constructed one made out of broken metal. The shooter that sat in the cabinet was just as makeshift as the projectile. The others had to see this. I came out with the chemicals, books, and this makeshift trap. Locking the door, I used the fasteners to secure it and an abrasive that grows into any open spots. It should seal it off and prevent air from getting through. When I showed West and Ronald the arrow and shooter, their faces went stark white in shock. Ronald said,
"I can't believe it."
West said,
"So that's how he killed."
I said, "I'm wondering if it's a remnant of the past." West's face lit up at the comment as he realized what I was insinuating. So West said somberly,
"Get in contact with command control and find out."
So I called them and communicated this information. But they weren't much help to me. The extraction team that they sent only picked up the bodies. Nothing else. When we tried to activate the security and fire doors, many of them didn't open. And as we would find out, somebody manually broke the circuit capacitors, leaving parts of the complex unreachable. So I drew for the diamond bit saw. I revved it up and started cutting my way from corridor, door to door towards the housing compartment, where the bedrooms were. This part of the complex was the cleanest. Other than the blood trail leading out to this area, it was relatively clean. That means all the killings happened outside of their bedrooms, away from their belongings and their comfort zone. It was disheartening the longer you thought about it. I checked the rooms, and one thing that bugged me as I released the droids into this space was the fact that all these rooms were untouched. The mission that was sent here to pick up the bodies didn't even bother to pick up the personal effects. Using the team member ledger that I found in the control room, I was able to figure out which room belonged to which person. Once my eye settled on the killer's name of Taylor Johnson, I made my way to his room. It was clean, and nothing seemed out of the ordinary, except for this large, glossy black stone sitting on the table attached to the wall. It was jagged and spiky as it sat there, glinting in the light. Was that something he was working on? The PA system chirped, and Ronald's voice came through it.
"Hey guys, can you come and check this out?"
West and I came out of the complex in our suits. Ronald was already out there with an air pressure blower. He was trying to clear up the heavy coil of dust that gathered on the complex and the outside platforms. Once I saw the clean sheen of the metal under the sun's glare, I smiled. That smile quickly dissipated, though, when I caught sight of those dark marks in the earth. It was like bones being unearthed by the erosion of the dust, but this was not human. Black in color, a stone-like mass traveled in uneven strands under the red earth. The surface of this stone was not solid in its hue, but it sparkled as it reflected light, and through its sheen, shapes manifested in the core. It was like gems that held the frozen specks of life from eons ago. What frightened me was what those shapes looked like. I swore to myself that maybe it was a coincidence, but those shapes in the depths of the stone looked like insects.
"Is that some type of stone? I don't have this on file."
Wes said. None of us did, and it was right outside our front door.
"That's not all,"
Ronald said and turned around. He turned on the blower and shot the air into the ground. Stones blew away in an uprising column of dust and revealed that the black stone was more interesting in its status on this planet. Ronald turned off the blower and said,
Go out further and look at it.
What we saw when we followed Ronald's instructions were the patterns. Long, perpendicular lines of the black stone surrounded the complex. How the hell was this possible? No one mentioned this in any of the reports sent to HQ, and it was the first time anyone was seeing this. So either they ignored it, or they kept it a secret for some explicit reason. Ronald said,
What do you think?
West rubbed his chin and stared in contemplation. I said, obviously the last team weren't impressed by it, but I saw a piece of it in one of the rooms. They must have dug up some of it. West said,
They probably have samples and records on it, no? Cooper, check the storages and records to see if you find anything.
I left out the part about it being in the killer's room, for I didn't think that was relevant information. My search for information on what the team was doing, both in physical documentation and electronic, was gone. The extraction team did a good job gathering that information and leaving nothing behind. Well, almost. We still had the untouched bedrooms. West decided that we'd leave those rooms alone and take any available unoccupied room out of the respect for the deceased. As far as the black stone, I gave him the one I found in the killer's room, and he said he would look at it later. As for me, I could contact Control, and they were probably useless to us now. They were, and they didn't help me outside of being surprised about the black stone. I told them to go through the records they captured and get back to me on what the deceased team wrote about that stone. After the call, I slid on my spacesuit and went to the roof with some tools. Damn! That ravine on the complex's roof was big. The further I looked down into it, the more my throat filled with bile. There was no way this was natural. So many unexplainable things. I shook my head in confusion, but I never got a chance to think about it, as the complex shuddered from a frightening quake. My legs wobbled as I tried to steady myself. Either that was an earthquake, or that was an explosion. But as I looked around the rocky landscape, I saw unsettled stones and rocks. The shaking stopped, but the alarms from the inside told me enough. Damn it! I ran off the roof and dropped hard on my feet. That hurt, but I pushed that to the back of my mind. I reached the door and slotted the password into the keypad. A beep screeched as the mechanism clicked. The door didn't open though. You could not be serious right now. I reinserted the password into the keypad, hoping I probably did it wrong. I heard no beep this time. Wait, wasn't the alarms blaring just a moment ago? I didn't hear a thing now. This must be a joke. I flipped on the radio on my suit.
West, Ronald, are you there? Come in.
All I got was static. God damn it.
West, Ronald, West, somebody, can you hear me? What's going on in there?
The static was an annoying greeting to get. Why was nobody answering the radio? I needed to get back inside, but how? Looking back at the stone, it gleamed under the bright glow of the sun. My hand fidgeted, and I immediately clenched my fist to stop the shaking. What was this feeling? Okay, focus. The door was locked. It looked like electricity has gone inside the complex, but that didn't explain why the door's system was out. It had its own internal battery, so it should be working. Worrying about that was not important right now. I needed to get back inside, and to be honest, there was one way in. I just wasn't going to like it. After I picked up the jackhammer, I got back on the roof and walked toward the hole in it. I stared down into the harrowing web of wires and mangled metal. My feet moved without hesitation as I climbed down into its chaotic design. Navigating all these jagged edges and wires was a pain, but I was able to squeeze through and into the area that I sealed off. The only light I was getting was from the hole in the roof. I was right. The power was gone. My hand torch was flicked on, and then I noticed it on my belt as I lifted the hammer. That was one problem. Now for the next problem. The fact that I had to break down the door that I sealed up. Oh, nothing could be more annoying than this. I turned on the hammer and went to the door. What I didn't expect was the paper attached to the door. I stopped and stared at it. It read, "It's mine." Several thoughts ran through my mind when I saw it. Many of them were contradictory, but I didn't have time to think about it, and I wasn't going to. If this was some sick joke from some infernal bastard living in this place, they better make sure I didn't catch them. I thrust the jackhammer into the door's edge and shattered the hardened abrasive before I broke through the door's connections. West and Ronald hadn't responded yet, so I hoped they just weren't near their radios. Something told me it was worse than that. For now, I needed to find an oxygen tank. The oxygen in the air was going to drop like a rock now that I opened the seal. I stepped into the control room and saw the control module was still operational, but malfunctioning as the screen fluctuated constantly with flashes of inconsistent data. "West!" I called. Nothing was heard. If an explosion erupted through the station enough to shake it, where would it come from? I went into the storage chamber and pulled out a spare tank of oxygen with a mask. A crackle. I turned around and shined a light on the open doorway. There was nothing. I turned off the jackhammer's engine, and the place fell into silence. A drop of sweat careened down my face as I left the control room. Walking around, I couldn't find anyone. Calling out for either Ronald or West would be so simple, but I was starting to realize it wasn't only 3 people here. If it came to that, I was going to make sure 3 people remained. I found equipment lying outside of the open tunnel that led to the waste channels under the complex. It must be West, who still worked down there. But what alarmed me was the dust and trickled water that coated the equipment in a haphazard way. From the burn damage on the entrance, the explosion most definitely came from there. I moved closer, but a distant voice made me freeze. The squishing of water against the floor piqued my interest. It was to my southeast. I spun around, and Ronald yelped as he backed away. My lips twisted into a frown and whispered, "God damn it, Ronald! Don't sneak up on me like that!" His breaths were short as he spoke.
Sorry. Just glad to see you. What's going on?
I threw him the oxygen tank and looked at the entrance. Let's find out. We went through the entrance and into the dirty tunnel, which had a reflective metal wall surrounding us. The further we went, the less shine it had, and the more fire damage showed. I tried to keep my body as small as possible, because my spacesuit was not touching this grime. A bright light kept drawing me closer, begging me to come to its blight. But I stalled in shock to see West. He laid motionless in the depths of that grime that was reddened with pools of blood, bubbled up from buoyancy. The surrounding wall was a mangled mess that revealed dirt that poured into this constricting tunnel. A fire blazed and grew from the center of the tunnel. Near the fallen West were broken pieces of plastic and metal shards. I shouted, "West!" As I hovered over him, I wondered if something exploded. I grabbed the collar of West's shirt.
Son of a...
Ronald's voice shook me. I spun around and saw a figure. For a moment, I could have sworn it was a monster, but it was a human man. Though the way his face looked crazed, and how his hand clutched that makeshift axe, he might as well have been a monster. Either way, it was clear who it was. Taylor Johnson.
It's mine.
Taylor Johnson bellowed, announcing his presence to them. I take back what I said. He actually might be crazy, Ronald said.
Can't be.
My hand shook as West raised out of the sludge, as if he raised from the dead. West! I grabbed him and lifted him out of the water. West groaned as the pain rattled him. He was bleeding so badly. I had to save him. But I blanched at the sight of his upper arm and chest. It showed so much blood-moistened bone and cartilage under the top skin layer. Oh, I knew he was not going to survive. The killer rushed forward, swinging the axe. The axe scraped against the wall in a ruckus screech. Ronald rushed forward and grabbed the waist of the murderous bastard. The killer swung up the axe, but Ronald pulled himself and Johnson into the dirty water. I called, "Ronald! Damn it!" West kept fidgeting as he rolled up next to me. "West, don't move, please."
Go. Leave.
West said. "Like hell I'm going to leave you behind. Get up. We are getting you out of here." I slid my shoulder under his, but he merely slumped back without any power in him. Ronald cried out in anger. His oxygen tank hits the wall and rolled back into the sewage. That mad murderer lifted his axe. I flung my jackhammer. It sailed into Johnson's gut. He doubled over like the discarded trash I considered him. Ronald leaped up and said,
Kelly!
I grabbed the tank before it reached the jaws of the fire. West used what strength he had to lift himself on one arm, just as Johnson rolled his body, and the axe right into my femur. I screamed as the axe cut into my suit and through my skin.
It's mine,
Johnson cried. Shut up, psycho! I threw my fist into his nose and he screamed as he dropped into the water. The sludge splashed into my helmet screen and blinded me. My bad leg was gripped and pulled. I ripped my helmet off and smacked Johnson in the face to force him to let go.
Go, Cooper!
West yelled. He jumped on Johnson and pulled him down into the sludge. No! I called after West, but Ronald grabbed me around the shoulder.
Cooper, we got to go!
And let this bastard escape again? He deserved hell, and I was going to deliver it. I threw the oxygen tank over the fire behind West and Johnson. Ronald said,
You crazy?
Move to live, I shouted when I pushed Ronald away. Ronald ran and so did I, pushing aside the thunderstrikes of pain in my leg. That wind pulled in just before it imploded and erected a fantastic booming blast that ripped through the complex's cellars. I coughed and rolled on the floor of the complex now that I was out of the sewer, but I immediately realized my fallacy. My helmet was left behind.
Cooper, hold on!
I stifled my breathing as I broke the hand torch off my suit and flashed it at Ronald's retreating feet. My eyes blinked as vigor left my arms and legs. A raging pain burst in my chest as I struggled for air. I blinked and gasped. But it wasn't my last breath. When I opened my eyes again, I saw Ronald breathing from an oxygen tank. A mask was over my nose and mouth. I was okay, but not so much for this complex. Hey sci-fi horror fans, it's Teresa. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Craving another scary story? Click on that video on your screen. Until next time, everyone. And remember, stay cosmic.